All right, so the Eagles just beat the Rams a lot to a little. So that means it's time to start here from Green Bay. As you can tell, the setup is not ideal. The hotel slash motel is not broadcast for. But the article's good. The game wasn't for the 49ers. An absolute embarrassment and a crystallization of many of the themes that we talked about over the course of the past several weeks that the 49ers have slogged through this season. They're going to have to retool a lot of what they're doing, and they're definitely going to have to do it around Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa. No Trent Williams. That they've contractually doubled down on Trent Williams as well. Christian McCaffrey too. He played today. McCaffrey just his third game back. But the guys that weren't available today, that's who was most noticeable because offensively, the 49ers couldn't stay out of their own way. They didn't have the stabilizing force that Brock Purdy is. 9 penalties in this game for the 49ers. And defensively, I mean, just atrocious run defense for the 49ers. Fred Warner said this might have been the worst half of defense that he'd been part of. And he's been around since 2018. There have been some bad halves of defense. Just such an ugly game for the 49ers that you look forward and the initial shell shock of this, the knee-jerk reaction that says, okay, the season is over. Well, those of you who want the season to be over, I have news for you. Bad news for you. This is the NFC West race right now. The mediocrity of the division has allowed the 49ers to stay afloat. They obviously haven't done anything for themselves over the past 2 weeks with the losses to the Seahawks, and now there's drubbing at the hands of the Green Bay Packers. But they're 5-6, and the top of the division is 6-5, and there's still 6 games left to play. So, for all intents and purposes, this race isn't over. Neither of these teams has separated itself. I'm sure that there will be at least another loss for all of these teams coming up, at least. And the schedule ahead for the 49ers actually is intriguing. Now, of course, they've got Buffalo next. But first things first, you got to emphasize this. Just look at the NFC West standings and realize it's still only November 24th. Might feel like a lot later in the season based on how ugly this has gotten for the 49ers, injury-wise and, of course, performance-wise. But this is what the 49ers are dealing with. NFC West mediocrity is keeping them alive. But we can talk about 2 things simultaneously. We can talk about mediocrity of the division while also talking about how the 49ers are going to have to retool. And the game today against Green Bay, I mean, we could just go through the laundry list of things that were deficient. We can talk about how they might have been better had the 49ers had some of their star players, but ultimately we're gonna get to the conclusion of even considering the fact that the star players weren't playing, his performance was alarmingly bad, embarrassingly bad for the 49ers. So, for example, the run defense, and this is one that I like to talk about a lot, right? I've been talking about the 49ers' bad run defense since last season. When that it really, really regressed under Steve Wilkes. Big part of the emphasis when they fired Steve Wilkes and moved to Nick Sorensen was the run defense has to be better. The base of what you're doing is stopping the run. The 49ers completely embarrassed the Packers back in the pinnacle of the Shanahan era. I consider to be that 37-20 win over Green Bay in the NFC Championship game in the 2019 season. The 49ers only needed to run the ball, pass the ball 8 times. They only passed the ball 8 times because they so thoroughly dominated Green Bay on the ground. I think it was Troy Aikman who said on TV that the Packers have lost their manhood today because they couldn't stop the 49ers run game. Well, the tables have almost completely turned based on the product that the 49ers put on the field today. The Packers had 125 rushing yards by halftime. 125 by half. They're on pace for 125 by halftime. They only passed for 163 yards on the game, yet they scored 38 points. The 49ers' worst defeats of the Shanahan era are a 30-point defeat against the Dallas Cowboys in 2017, 40-10. That game was at Levi's. That was a brutal, brutal loss. And then the following year against the Rams, went on to the Super Bowl that season. They lost 39-10 at home. So 30-point loss, 29-point loss in 2017 and 2018. This was a 28-point loss to a team that passed for only 163 yards. So the run defense for the 49ers, they entered this team ranking number 21 in the league. That's why I've been talking about it. Not good enough. They got to get it in the top half of the league. The run defense completely cratered. That was a bottom barrel effort from the 49ers run defense. I don't care if they don't have Nick Bosa. They can't miss 10 tackles in one quarter. They missed 10 tackles in the first quarter today. They were out of their gap so many times. I mean, Shanahan was very, very blunt about this. You got to wonder what the conversations are going to be like between Shanahan and Nick Sorensen when Shanahan is saying, "We all got embarrassed." That's one quote. I'm going through my article on the San Francisco Standard. Shanahan then said right here, read this. The defense was real disappointing. We got out of gaps too many times. We missed way too many tackles. That was one of the worst halves I've been a part of. I mean, Kyle Shanahan has been around the game for a while. For him to go out and say that was one of the worst halves I've been a part of, those are pointed comments. He also is not happy with the 49ers run defense. Between the missed tackles, the missed gaps, and then it all really blends together. And we talked about Nick Sorensen, the first-year defensive coordinator, having to find his stride. I mean, in the past, first-year defensive coordinators have had to find their stride. But DeMeco Ryans, by this point in the season, the defense was really starting to show that verve, that life, that adjustment ability that allowed the 49ers to carry that team all the way to the NFC Championship game in 2020. And forget adjustment ability for the 49ers. They just didn't come out ready to play. They schematically were not ready to fill the right gaps against the Green Bay Packers team in the run game, and they were not ready on third down. And that's another huge alarm bell. When I talk about what the 49ers need to retool on this team, another big alarm bell is the third down defense, which has consistently been bad this year, number 25 in the NFL. But the Packers today went 6 of their first 7 on third down. There was a drive where the Packers converted a 3rd and 10, a 3rd and 5, and a 3rd and 11, all in one drive. It was just like no resistance from the 49ers. I talked about it a lot, and this is one of the keys entering the game because they didn't have Bosa. You would like to see the 49ers manufacture something to make up at least partially for that loss. You can't get yourself in this corner where not having Bosa completely derails you and turns into this massive train wreck. You could be a struggling defense. You could be a defense that maybe is not leading the team to victories, but you've got to be able to, at least duct tape job this so the defense can play decently well. Like, just not fall apart. Just not give up 125 rushing yards in one half. Just not give up 6 of 7 third downs. And Sorensen's defense couldn't do that today. They missed an NFL, for this season, it was an NFL record, 10 tackles in the first quarter. Like, it was beyond bad between the execution, tackling-wise, between what they were doing schematically. They didn't throw maybe one blitz. I'll give them credit for one blitz that might have confused the Packers. There was a 0 blitz. Maybe the second drive of the game. I think Green Bay ended up converting on third down anyway, and I think that was the touchdown drive or the scoring drive where they converted the 3rd and 10, the 3rd and 5, and the 3rd and 11. But we saw a prime example of why the 49ers don't blitz a lot, even when they probably should be blitzing more, because it's hard to generate a ferocious pass rush without Bosa, and it's because the blitzes aren't confusing people. On one side, the 49ers take all this pressure, and it seems to throw them off more often than not lately. Like, there have been a lot of pivotal game situations where extra heat from the defense has failed the 49ers offense. But virtually everything that they're throwing at opposing offenses with their own blitz is not generating the desired results. So when we talk about retooling, the 49ers have to make sure that they're schematically comfortable and in place in a way that they clearly haven't been since DeMeco Ryans left this team after the 2022 season. The Ryans defense under his tenure, they peaked in 2022, top ranked defense in the league. He was great at adjustments. He was the blitzes, even though they weren't that common, they did hit. The blitzes weren't hitting today. The run defense wasn't in the right gap today. And all of this to me just illustrated, damn, Nick Bosa's good. Because we had seen hints of these problems with the run defense, with the third down defense. But when Bosa had been in the game for the 49ers, he had at least kept it respectable. I mean, last week he was playing on one healthy oblique, and he had 2 sacks. Last week, they gave up only 3.3 yards per play when Bosa was into the Seahawks, and it ballooned to 6.1 yards per play, which is terrible after Bosa went out against the Seahawks. So that just continued in this game. I mean, the night and day difference between having Bosa and not having Bosa is just too big. So to retool the depth around Bosa to make them less reliant on this one superstar, the 49ers, they have to hope this draft class, which I think is off to a good start. I think the draft class, I mean, that's one thing that has taken definite steps in the right direction this year is the 2024 draft class. You just obviously can't rely on rookies, the guys winning you games. The rookies have to be a good augment, good supplement to the superstars. And today they're missing too many stars. But moving forward, guys like Malik Mustafa have to keep growing. Guys like D. Winters, who I thought made one of his best plays, maybe his best NFL play last week when he covered DK Metcalf successfully early in the game. I think he had a nice stop today. I have to watch the tape to really get to the nitty gritty of this. But defensive players like that, right? The draftees who are already being thrust into the lineup. Bernardo Green, I think he gave up a big catch to Romeo Dobbs early. That might have been on one of the third downs. But the returns on somebody like Bernardo Green have been positive so far. That's continuing the development of those rookies is going to be a big part of the retooling effort. But I think the 49ers need more. Today they got, and I think it's going to have to come from veteran additions, whether it be a return of Dre Greenlaw, which might not take full effect until after this season, right? He's coming off an Achilles. We'll see if we see him back at practice this week, but he's one of the most physical members of the 49ers defense. And they do seem to have lost an edge of physicality, especially when you see all those missed tackles and you see that number 21 ranked performance against the run. Today, they did suffer another bad break when Jordan Elliott, who they signed to be their main run stopper, defensive tackle, suffered a concussion. Obviously, no Javon Hargrave since the week 3 game against the Rams. That's also thinned them out at defensive tackle. So they need a little bit more juice on the interior. That's definitely a place that I expect the 49ers to look to bolster this offseason. You could always use more edge rushers. They signed Leonard Floyd to a 2-year contract, and Floyd was one of the statistical bright spots for the 49ers in this game. He had 2 sacks today. Mike actually sent me a really good graphic. Let me see if I can open this. Leonard Floyd had one of the more successful days pass rushing of anybody in the league today. Yeah, this is it. Let's check this out. This is from Seth Walder of ESPN. These are the highest pass rush win rate amongst edge rushers. Look where Leonard Floyd was today, this week. There's a lot of good names on this list. Rashawn Gary today had a nice game for Green Bay, but Floyd right there by Max Crosby, Danielle Hunter, Chop Robinson of the Miami Dolphins. The 49ers will see him a little later this year. Floyd, I think he's gotten a lot of unwarranted flack. I think he is exactly who the 49ers thought he was. A bookend for Nick Bosa, but not a dominant bookend, a good bookend with a high motor. Somebody who's given the 49ers and every team that he's played for over the past several seasons a consistent 10 sacks there. He's at 6.5 now after 2 sacks today for the 49ers. So I actually think that they got a nice piece in Floyd, but I think they need more punch, which is why they signed Javon Hargrave before last season, and they obviously don't have Hargrave now. They need more pass rushing punch from the interior. They need to find a way to consistently deliver that so that it's there even if Nick Bosa is missing a game or two. Because the way that the way that declined today was downright alarming. And I think shocking in a way for the 49ers. I think, my prediction was laughably off. I said Packers would win 28-23. There's a big difference between 28-23 Green Bay and what we ended up seeing, 38-10. And it's because the 49ers defense delivered such a no-show that I think it blew everybody's mind. I don't think there are many people, some people probably say I told you so right now, but this defense has not been that bad in a long time. Coincidentally, the last time they were that bad was 2018 before Nick Bosa walked in the door, but I guess that just proves my point. At safety, I know Jair Brown dropped that one interception. Lenore, there was a mixed up coverage early in this game where Lenore collided with a teammate because of the coverage bust, and he got hurt. He later came back into the game, but just, ugly stuff like that. Obviously, Charvarius Ward was not active yet. He just returned from bereavement leave. We'll see how they decide to approach the cornerback position moving forward. If they're just going to hand the reins to the youngsters they have already paid, Diamond Lenore. Ward's going to be a free agent after this season. I know Renardo Green has emerged. You can never have too many good corners. I actually think that's one of the strengths of the team. They only gave up 163 passing yards today. It all comes back down to the run defense, because if you can't stop the run, you're not going to have much fun. And the 49ers absolutely didn't. On the other side of the ball, and obviously I wrote about both, here's a picture of Brandon Allen. Brock Purdy is so damn good. It's beyond time for people to just sit up and admit it. Just sit up and admit that Brock Purdy is a really, really damn good quarterback. When you saw the execution flaws of this unit today, so we're talking Deebo Samuel dropping that one pass when the 49ers were down 17-7. That turned it into the interception, and that turned into a 24-7 Green Bay lead. When you look at the penalties up front with, today was Dominic Pooney, who was really good this year. He delivered 3 penalties. It was the rookie kind of day for Dominic Pooney. Really hard to be overly critical of him, but you saw those procedure issues for the 49ers up front. When you saw their inability to handle some of that pressure that Green Bay brought today, it should make you very shocked. And if you're a 49ers fan, very thankful that somehow, some way, the 49ers, while Brock Purdy was healthy and available, were 5-5. The fact that he was able to take the litany of problems that were completely exposed, it's like you ripped off the lid and you saw this ugliness, all these problems. The fact that he was able to operate with that over the first 10 games and do what he did, and most of those composite quarterback metrics have Purdy at least in the top 5. There are a couple that have him in the top 2 or the top 3 based on all the stuff that he was doing when we isolate his play from the team. I think it's downright miraculous that the 49ers have the record that they do, given the issues that we saw today. And we have seen leading up into this game, but just not at that extent. So Purdy is really damn good. He's obviously the centerpiece. There should no longer be even a question of, do you pay this guy? Do you not pay this guy? He's worth his $60 million or whatever it's going to be. Whatever the market dictates, Brock Purdy is playing at the most important position, and he is the 49ers' answer there, point blank, no question. How are they going to make sure that this is properly retooled around him? You're committed to Christian McCaffrey, obviously. And I think McCaffrey is going to be just fine. I thought that he ran just fine. When you don't have a consistent passing threat, and I also don't think that Kyle Shanahan has his fastball as we speak right now. I'll get into that a little bit later. But when you're not cohesively running and passing, the offense is just tripping over itself with penalties. I'm sorry, you're just not going to be in a position to rip off a massive chunk run game. Like, I think they only ran 16 times today. They just weren't in a position of a good platform. They didn't have a platform to attack with the run game. They waited with the way that they wanted to. I blame Kyle Shanahan the most. I understand Brandon Allen's a backup quarterback, and I've already talked about this, and I could circle back to it. They had a 4th and 2 early in the second half. where they're down 10, they're moving, they're in Green Bay territory, and on that 4th and 2, they go empty backfield. They don't even threaten to run on that play, and they wonder why they didn't convert the first down. I don't think going empty backfield in a 4th and short, a runnable distance is a good strategy with a backup quarterback. So anyway, all of the mess offensively today, all the issues that I'm talking about, did not give us a good platform to evaluate individual running backs. That plus Jordan Mason, I think, only got 1 carry for 16 yards. But they only had those, 14 carries or so total. I think they got talent in the running back room. They obviously have a great quarterback in Brock Purdy. They need to get him back. We'll see if he will be back by next week. No word on that front yet. But they have to really decide what the receiving weaponry is going to be for Brock Purdy. George Kittle's a hell of a player. I can't believe that people this past offseason were talking about, how long is George Kittle going to be around? George Kittle's going to be around as long as he's playing at this level. He's going to be around as long as he wants to with the 49ers, because he's a massive key for this team. They're missing him so bad against Seattle the week before. With the way they run things, I mean, George Kittle is a staple, and it needs to stay that way. The future of Brandon Ayuk is going to be insanely interesting. He's going to be coming off a severe knee surgery, and I look at some of the receiving struggles of Deebo Samuel. By the way, the whole myth that Deebo Samuel has lost burst running-wise was completely debunked when we saw him take the kickoff. 90 yards today was called back by the holding penalty on Eric Saubert. But Deebo Samuel's moving just as well as he's always moved. I would say maybe even a little bit better. He entered this season actually lighter than before, but he struggled to catch the ball today. I really think that the absence of Brandon Ayuk has put a lot of pure receiver pressure on Deebo Samuel. And that pure receiver pressure, I mean, he's not a pure receiver. Deebo Samuel's Deebo. He's a bulldozer. He's a hell of a weapon. But with all the 49ers offensive issues that we had talked about already to this point, that the yak going down to number 32, Kyle Shanahan not being a step ahead like he normally is. A lot of that was connected to Christian McCaffrey not being available. With all of that happening, the biggest threat that Deebo Samuel has presented opposing defenses has been way softened this year. The short catch and yak bulldozer mode that Deebo Samuel had gone into so often before just is not a featured part of his game, based on how the 49ers are not operating as cohesively and how Shanahan is not operating at the level that he had been operating at in the past. So that, combined with the fact that Brandon Ayuk is not available, and this stretches back to even when Ayuk was available. He wasn't very good this year. That was coming off of the missed training camp and the contract extension, but that's put more of an onus on Deebo Samuel to just be a pure receiver. Catch these intermediate passes, be more like Ayuk, be more like Juwan Jennings. And today that obviously went horribly wrong when that ball skipped off of Deebo Samuel's hands and into the waiting breadbasket of Xavier McKinney for that really, really damaging interception. So Deebo's got 1 more year under contract with the 49ers. I am very, very intrigued, as I mentioned, to see what Brandon Ayuk is going to come back like and what the 49ers envision as far as the evolution of their offense around Purdy when it comes to the role of Deebo Samuel. They've obviously got Juwan Jennings in at a great rate for next year, like $7 or $8 million. So Jennings is a stud. He's gonna be with the 49ers. But how are they going to attack that Z position? Philosophically, what are they going to go after? Is Ricky Pearsall going to take that next step to firmly be one of the 49ers' top 3 receivers, even when Brandon Ayuk is back? I mean, those are the type of retooling questions that the 49ers will be asking themselves. But the crazy thing is that, after a loss like that, a 28-point loss, and then 2 straight losses and last place in the division, you talk about it right away, which is what we're doing right now. But you also have to color it with this context, that means the 49ers are only technically a game and a half back, because they don't have the tiebreakers against any of these football teams. So this season is not over yet. The 49ers have to circle the wagons and find a way to do this retooling, as much of it as they can on the fly, because in the NFL, you have to keep on fighting. It's way too unpredictable of a league to just mail it in. Both McVay and Shanahan So the Rams and the 49ers are 5-6 coming off of blowout losses. How much did the Rams lose by? I didn't see the end of the game. I know I started right when it finished. Mike, how much did the Rams lose by? Good 3 possessions, right? I saw Saquon Barkley running crazy. So both the 49ers and the Rams had higher expectations than 5-6 at this point. It's funny because I think a lot of people thought those were the 2 best teams in the division, but the Seahawks and the Cardinals have been a little bit better so far. I think that right now, you need to look at the records for the race purposes, but on any given Sunday, some of these teams are going to win, some of these teams are going to lose. There is no dominant force right now in the division. It is a lot of mediocrity. That mediocrity has helped keep the 49ers afloat, and they are going to be pushing forward with first place in the division still within their sights. 37-20, that's funny. That was the score of the Rams-Eagles game. So it's the same score as the 49ers beating the Packers in the 19 NFC Championship game. I thought that Green Bay really exacted revenge today for that. Green Bay ran 40 times. They ran for, 5-something yards per carry. Green Bay did to the 49ers what Shanahan at his best does to opposing teams. He runs 40 times, doesn't pass a whole lot. They didn't have to pass a whole lot because the run game is so effective. You pass enough to unlock the effectiveness. 6 of 7 third downs were enough for Green Bay, and the 49ers got a taste of their own medicine today. Depleted roster fell victim to what the 49ers, when they've been healthier and when Shanahan has been better, have administered against other teams. Why don't I open up the roster here? Why don't we go through some of this? Why don't we take a look at this just from a position by position lens to see what the 49ers can do in the short term and what they can do to improve in the longer term. So quarterback, obviously you've got your centerpiece, but Purdy is special. And those of us who knew what we were watching, I think knew that leading into this game. I can't imagine anybody is blind to that at this point. When the 49ers lose by 28, and it's the worst loss since 2017 and 2018 before Purdy was around, and when Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't available in the 2 games they lost, it was, again, that 40-10 loss to the Cowboys, 30 points, and then 39-10 to the Rams in 2018, 29 points. It's not a coincidence that the 49ers lost by about the same margin, 28 points, as they lost in those games before they had a quarterback in place. I mean, it's 1 + 1 = 2 kind of stuff. It's the most important position. Purdy's a stabilizing force, right? I attacked this so much in the article up on the San Francisco Standard. The 49ers talked about cadence issues today. Chris Conley had a great quote about the cadence issues. And yeah, they say it's nothing to do with the quarterback. Like specifically, it doesn't have. They practice the cadence with Brandon Allen, and he tries to sound the same. And different guys false start, different guys blow assignments. Yeah, it's not specifically on the quarterback, but Purdy is not a specific fix. Purdy is a general fix. He is the QB. He is somebody that brings that aura of confidence and stability to the huddle and then to the line of scrimmage. That is a quarterback's job in this sport. That's why they make so much money. That's why Brock Purdy is going to make over $60 million a year. He's going to surpass Dak Prescott, is because that is the position that can elevate the rest of the team. Remember when Jimmy Garoppolo stepped in? It was back before he tore his ACL in 2017. The 49ers were 1-10. They finished 6-10. He just immediately came in, elevated the operation of everything, and the 49ers went on their surge in 2017. And then he tore his ACL, and they cratered in 2018. And then he came back in 2019, and they were a good team again. Not to say they didn't have other guys that were doing really well, but quarterback just inherently is the most important position. You have to have that stabilizing presence on the roster spot, looking in the huddle. I mean, I can go back to the game against Tampa Bay, where it might have even been Miami. It was either Miami or Tampa Bay, where Brock Purdy told George Kittle to shut up. George Kittle was horsing around in the huddle. Purdy immediately commanded the huddle. He commanded the proceedings. And it's no coincidence that when you've got a great quarterback in there, you make fewer mistakes. Today, I mean, it was just a litany of errors, drops, You had the procedure penalties up front. Brandon Allen, this could have been a whole lot uglier had the Packers actually caught that first really ugly pass in the coverage from Brandon Allen, didn't layer it over the underneath defender. Well, that's something that Purdy has been really good at. I mean, this could have been even worse, and it was bad to begin with, right? It was a 20-point loss. So long story short, Brock Purdy gives you both tangibly and intangibly what you need from the quarterback position to be a good team. And I want to go back to the cadence stuff really fast here on the San Francisco Standard, because I thought that this was a really interesting part of the discussion. Chris Conley said, this league is predicated on defensive lines that jet up field and get off the ball. We have to be more disciplined when we use our cadence. We've got to keep repping it. There's no way around it. You have to lock in. You can't make those mistakes. There's a veteran who was supremely frustrated with the mental mistakes the 49ers kept on making over and over and over in this game. And when they circle the wagons in this offseason, even if they find a way to turn this around to close this year, they have to, Shanahan is going to have to take a very, very honest and close look at the process of installation, of communication, to make sure that this is way more locked down than it was today. Because even though Purdy has been good enough to mask so many of these issues, at least to the point where the 49ers have stayed afloat, not gotten blown out, they're 5-5 entering this game. Even though he has been good enough to do that, what today told us is that those underlying issues are a little too deep-seated. And that's a bad thing. That's going to prevent you from really reaching the ceiling that your physical talent would indicate that you have if you're the 49ers. Anyway, back to the roster. Let's go through this. Running back room, fine. I talked about the receiving room. They didn't have Jacob Cowing today. So Ricky Pearsall actually got to return punts, which I thought was promising. They couldn't stay out of their own way as far as holding penalties on the punt returns went. But that's not Ricky Pearsall's fault. I thought he looked really comfortable back there. He was the full-time punt returner at Florida last year. I think that Ricky Pearsall's in position to have that job moving forward. I mean, he just a really, really smooth operator. We've seen Cowing muff punts for the 49ers this year, but Ricky Pearsall, so far, it's a clean slate for him. Moving down tight end, if the 49ers this offseason, when we talk about retooling, can finally find a tight end too. I know that they tried to get one this past year. Brock Wright re-signed with the Detroit Lions, and that ended up being one of the bigger misses of the 49ers offseason. He was a restricted free agent, so the 49ers, that was a tough situation. They couldn't do much more. They just offered a contract, and the Lions matched, but that counterbalance to Kittle, I think, could really help give the 49ers some more shelf life with some of the current core pieces that they have. And then finally, the offensive line today, it was Jalen. I've got to shade Trent Williams with the injury color, but I'm going to have to watch the tape to see how the straight up pass protection was in this game. The pass protection this year hasn't been horrific. The weak points have been Brendel and Banks in the middle. I think the procedural penalties were really problematic for the 49ers today up front. I know 3 penalties did go against Dominic Puni. They took a step toward improving that offensive line by drafting Dominic Puni. Great pick. Trent Williams still going to be around for at least a couple more years. So, I mean, you've just got to keep him as healthy as possible. I think him attending training camp next year could be something that helps in that regard, because he showed up late this year, and it's very possibly something that could heighten the injury risk. He's been playing a bad ankle for a while. But Aaron Banks is going to be a free agent. They've got Colton McKivitz under contract for 1 more year, and Jake Brendel's still under contract. But those 3 spots, I don't know if they can upgrade all 3 of them, but I think the 49ers will take a swing on upgrading at least one of them this offseason to take that line to yet another level, to give this offense a little bit more stability. Defensively, that's where the massive, massive mess was for the 49ers today. And, losing Jordan Elliott, we could shade here in pink, concussion protocol for Jordan Elliott now. That hurts. The Kevin Givens absence, that's been a super underrated absence. He's been out for a while. at this point with the groin injury. When do you get him back? Because you definitely need some more depth inside, especially while Javon Hargrave is out. And the future of Hargrave is going to be really interesting. They say there's a chance he comes back this season still. So we'll see if the 49ers can somehow stay in this race, given how mediocre the NFC West is. Yetur Gross-Matos, I haven't watched the tape yet, so I'll have a better evaluation of him probably tomorrow. Again, I think Leonard Floyd is a guy you want on your team. 6.5 sacks already this year. He's done some good things for the 49ers, but it's Bosa who was that gaping, missing centerpiece. Dre Greenlaw should be back at practice this week. And when we talk about the 49ers embarrassing themselves physically, giving up those 125 rushing yards in the first half, missing over 20 tackles on this game, somebody that's got to be wincing, maybe throwing up in his mouth when he's watching that is Dre Greenlaw, a guy that prides himself on that hard-nosed physicality that the 49ers just don't seem to have right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think Devondre Campbell has been bad, especially over the past 3-4 weeks for 49ers. Former Packer, by the way. Saw some Packers fans with Devondre Campbell jerseys. But he's a replacement for Dre Greenlaw. And I don't know what Dre Greenlaw is going to come back as. I don't know what that Achilles explosiveness is going to look like. I don't know if he's going to be 80% of what used to be 90%. I don't know if it's going to take a build from 70%. I mean, these are all questions in front of the 49ers, but I think it's really, really clear that they need another thumper at that linebacker position, kind of the sidekick to Fred Warner, who does a great job in coverage. He does a great job diagnosing everything. But Dre Greenlaw was the enforcer of this defense, and it's a defense that's not enforcing much. Demetrius Flanagan-Foles was also hurt today, so I'm just updating the roster as we go through. I think secondary-wise at the cornerback position, they're in bad shape. I mean, they've got, and we saw some Rock Ya-Sin today after Diamondo Lenore went out. He's a veteran. He's a stopgap. But between Renato Green and Diamondo Lenore, you've got two solid outside corners. We'll see what else they decide to do. Is it re-signing Charvarius Ward? Is it bringing in another corner? Do you draft somebody up high? But they have taken a step forward in pass defense, and I have to keep on repeating, they only gave up 163 pass yards today. They've got to make sure that they are making commensurate strides in run defense, though. And that's where the physical enforcement of somebody like Dre Greenlaw and the depth of that defensive line is so big. Malik Mustafa, another nice tackle for loss today. I think the jury really still is out on Jair Brown. That dropped interception was a painful play for the 49ers. Anyway, that's the roster. That's the retool that has to happen around Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa. But you can learn from omission in this game. You can learn from what the 49ers didn't have. And that is, and this is in case you already didn't know, I think it should have been obvious coming into this game, but hopefully it's obvious now. Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa are centerpiece worthy, because when you take them out of the equation, it's like this Jenga tower. It all collapses. Worst loss since 2017 and 2018 before either of those two guys were around. Moving forward, the 49ers have the Buffalo Bills next week. Mike was joking. I think this is the time when the 49ers should have just stayed back east and locked everybody into a hotel for a week to force them to figure some things out. But if they needed that, unfortunately, they're not going to get it because they're flying home as we speak right now. I'm sure they'll land at SFO within the next couple of hours. And then they'll have Thanksgiving. So at least guys get to see their family, but they're going to have to stay focused and get ready for another flight back out to cold weather destination in Buffalo. I find it highly unlikely that the 49ers can win in Buffalo. That being said, maybe if Brock Purdy can return, and we don't know his status right now, they're going to run him through some tests Monday and Tuesday. If they get Purdy and Bosa back, they've got a fighting chance. That, again, that's another illustration of the value of those two star players. But even if they get them back, it's going to be tough against Buffalo. On the road, Buffalo's going to be coming off the bye. They're 9-2. Like, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. So the 49ers are probably going to be looking at 5-7, unless they could find a way to watch the shocking. But say that they're 5-7, looking at standings like this. Where will Seahawks, the Cardinals, and the Rams be after this week? That will set things up for the final 5-game stretch. For the 49ers, it's going to be the Bears at home. Then it's going to be the Rams coming into Levi's, who lost by 3 possessions today at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. Then it's going to be the Miami Dolphins, who've been playing better football. Then the Lions. That's looking daunting, to say the least. Obviously, the 49ers would have to pick up some momentum before that happens in about 5 weeks. And then it's going to be the Arizona Cardinals. In all likelihood, the 49ers can probably, I don't know what the likelihood is. I'm lying when I say in all likelihood. I look at it and I say, 49ers might have to go 5-1. Who knows? Maybe 4-2 will do it over the final 6 games. I don't know. The first things first, they just have to sit back and pick up the pieces after today, get their star players back, and retool what they can in the short term, because a bigger retool is going to be needed in the longer term. They already began last offseason. I get it. They had a good draft class, and that draft class is going to filter into the mix for the 49ers. It already is. I think it's already been more successful than some people anticipated. But you got to keep your foot on the gas. And the amount of stuff that this team has gone through this year, you talk about 2020 vibes. I get it. They played all those games over 3 seasons entering this season. They didn't have, any positive reinforcement to speak of as in terms of a Super Bowl trophy. I know they won a lot of big games, but it's really deflating when you lose the last one of the season. They didn't get that. So they came into this season tired. They were further exhausted by the Brandon Ayuk holdout, the Trent Williams holdout. I mean, Ricky Pearsall got shot in the chest right around the time that those holdouts were finalized. And then all these injuries happened, which obviously related, I think, to some of the physical fatigue that the last 3 years have put on the 49ers. I mean, they're dealing with stuff, and the product on the field has eroded, I think, thanks in large part kind of stuff. So sometimes you just have a down year, right? But even in a down year, sometimes you can still contend if your division is having a similar down year, which is what we're seeing with the NFC West. So when you go through a down year, you think about the retooling process. You think about, what is it going to take to lick our wounds and get back? That's what the 49ers have to tell themselves. Get back to the level that they were at before, to where they're doing stuff to other teams like the Green Bay Packers did to them today. And that's why I outlined what I just did. Want me to give you guys a cool little tour of Lambeau Field? Why don't we do that right now? And maybe you guys could ask some of your questions. But actually, I don't have that it's on my phone. I uploaded it from my phone. I'm lying. I don't have it available for you right now. So we'll have to look at that in a little bit. It's already up, though. I posted it as my 49ers locker room reaction. It was fun stuff on a not so fun day for the San Francisco 49ers. Mike, what do you want me to talk about? Yeah, I got public rec, Mike. We're going to get the public rec right now, because they are the ones who have brought us this show. And we thank them for bringing us this show. So this show is brought to you by Public Rec. Are you tired of squeezing into stiff dress pants at that holiday party? This season, unwrap the gift of comfort with the Game Changer pants from Public Rec. The office pants that look like Monday but feel like Sunday. Imagine clocking in while feeling as cozy as if you were still in bed, sipping hot cocoa with a soft hand feel and smooth drape. These pants are fan favorites for a reason, whether you're closing deals in the boardroom, navigating holiday travel, or mingling at company parties. The Game Changers will keep you looking sharp and feeling great. Public Rec is the ultimate men's clothing brand for blending comfort and style seamlessly. And trust me, you won't be disappointed. Stop suffering in regular pants and give the gift of comfort this holiday season. For a limited time only, our listeners get 20% off when you use the code Lombardi at checkout. That's 20% off with the code Lombardi at publicrec.com. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Give yourself or someone you love the gift of comfort this holiday. Thanks to Public Rec. You can build your wardrobe with Public Rec. We'll see how the 49ers retool what they have in stock. First, it has to start from within, and they have a lot on injured reserve right now. But then it's going to have to, I think big picture when I talk 49ers strategy. I think short term and big picture, and you have to make both of those worlds live simultaneously. And in the 49ers case, they can look at both simultaneously because of how mediocre the NFC West is and because of who they have coming off of injured reserve. They would hope at least soon. We'll get that Brock Purdy update for you early this week, so be sure to stay tuned in as this Thanksgiving holiday comes up. But even beyond Bosa and Purdy, there was so much that was discouraging about this 49ers performance in terms of the tackling, in terms of the communication. They had 2 12-men on the field penalties consecutively on back-to-back plays. I mean, just this was atrocious stuff that we saw out of the 49ers, and it can do two things at once. If you're a 49ers fan, it could disgust you because you see a team that is not performing the way that they should, and it could also sell you even more on how good Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa have been to mask a lot of that stuff, because I guarantee you it didn't just show up today. When a team delivers with its back up against the wall like the 49ers were today, if they deliver a stinker like that, those issues have not just appeared right now. They've been there. We've been talking about them week to week, but again, we haven't had to emphasize them as much because there have been good superstar performances to gloss them over. Force multiplying performances from guys like Purdy, from guys like Nick Bosa. 14 pressures for Bosa against Seattle. Purdy, remember the game against Tampa Bay? Brock Purdy, the 49ers on his back and carried them. Well, they might need more of that in the short term, and then they need to find a way to make things a little bit more sustainable in the long term. I think the rookie class growing into its own will help, but once we hit the offseason, we'll know exactly what the 49ers need, and we'll be able to compare it with the salary cap, and we'll know who's available, and we'll be able to chart the moves from there. For the time being, though, we're going to focus on the now, and the now is this loss to the Packers, a game coming up against the Bills, and a month of December that, I know it's blasphemous to say this while everybody is kind of toxically upset right now, but this month of December might still be interesting, to say the least, given the mediocrity of the NFC West. Mike, do you have any questions that you want me to address? If Mike doesn't have any questions, I think we'll get going. Again, we're not in the nicest setting, but I think the Wi-Fi in this little Green Bay, it's a hotel. I mean, it's straddling the line between hotel and motel fairly dangerously, but we'll call it a hotel. I think the Wi-Fi that kept in decent enough range for us to be happy about how it did here. Check out the article on the San Francisco Standard. It's up on the screen. You can see the headline there. A lot of good quotes from the locker room. I opened up talking about Christian McCaffrey, who's morose, sitting in front of his locker. He was the last one to leave from that room. I opened up talking about that, but talk about a whole lot else. Really critical of the many things that went wrong, but also taking a look at how the 49ers can get things right. Got to talk the strategy. 38-10, Packers over the 49ers. An embarrassing day it wasn't the frozen tundra yet, on the tundra here in Green Bay. We'll talk to you guys soon.